Good evening. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's webinar and to share this time together. I'm Professor Sabina Dizdarevic, your current BNMS President, Consultant Physician in Nuclear Medicine at University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust and Brighton and Sussex Medical School. Very warm welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, Siemens Healthineers, Novartis, and Curium, for their support and collaboration. Tonight, we are honored to be joined by two esteemed past presidents of the BNMS, Professor Alan Perkins and Dr. Alp Notke, who will reflect on their time as presidents, including the challenges they navigated, inspirations they shaped their leadership, and the milestones they achieved. This evening, our Honorary Treasurer, Chani Kalirei, will join me for discussion with our past presidents. He will also share his perspectives on nuclear medicine, past, present, and future. Development of radionuclide techniques and modalities has a long and distinguished history in the UK. And tonight, we have the privilege of reflecting on that journey with those who helped shape it. During the webinar, after initial discussions with both past presidents, Professor Perkins will also give us a keynote talk entitled A Personal Journey from the First Surgical Gamma Probes to Intraoperative Hybrid Imaging. The audience will have an opportunity to ask both presidents questions, whether related to their interviews or to the keynote talk. Please post your questions in a Q&A box. Let me begin by introducing Professor Alan Perkins. Professor Perkins is a Professor Emeritus of Medical Physics in the School of Medicine at University of Nottingham. He worked for almost 40 years in medical physics at Nottingham University Hospital's NHS Trust, specializing in nuclear medicine. During his time, he maintained involvement in clinical services and was a member of the team that established the PET-CT imaging center at the Nottingham City Hospital campus. After completing his PhD in radiolabeled monoclonal antibodies at the Nottingham University, Alan carried out extensive research with clinical, academic, and industrial collaborators in nuclear medicine, gastroenterology, radiopharmacology, drug delivery, and radiation protection. This resulted in authorship of over 250 peer-reviewed publications and 6 published books. He remains active working on small field of view hybrid optical gamma imaging. Alan is both the past Honorary Secretary and past President of the British Nuclear Medicine Society. He is also past Chief Editor of Nuclear Medicine Communications. Alan was made an Honorary Fellow of the Royal College of Physicians of London in 2011. In 2013, he was awarded the BNMS Norman Wheel Medal, and in 2020 received the Healthcare Science Lifetime Achievement Award from NHS England. In 2025, he was awarded an MBE for services to patients' care and clinical science. Alan, thank you for joining us this evening. What an impressive biography. I'm truly very much looking forward to speaking to you tonight. Hello.
Thank you, Sabina. It's a pleasure to be here, and congratulations on this series of seminars. They're very interesting.
Thank you. And I think this one is really, really promising. And I can't really wait to hear about, your journey through the nuclear medicine. But at this stage, I'm quite keen to ask what inspired you to take on role of the BNMS president.
Well, I think probably the first thing was when I became honorary secretary. I just had a phone call from Andrew Hilson one afternoon saying, would I be interested in working on the council of BNMS? And I sort of ummed and ahed a little bit. He said, well, actually, we just wonder if you'd like to be honorary secretary. And it didn't take me long to say, yes, I'd be delighted to help, because I felt that nuclear medicine was one of the main specialties that I'd enjoyed working with. And I felt it'd be nice to give something back to the society. And because it was such a multi-professional organisation, I had great pleasure working with a range of colleagues, and I never looked back. I never regretted the decision.
Yeah, I think BNMS is really special, and we are a special community. And it's amazing to hear about, your CV. And I remember myself, the period of a lot of challenges during that time. And what would
Yeah.
you say that was your main challenge during your presidency, but also, in your NHS experience?
Uh, I think probably having joined BNMS as on secretary, the first real challenge was the Litvinenko poisoning, which occurred in 2006, sorry. And it was at the time when Litvinenko had been admitted to hospital, and the toxicologists couldn't understand what was wrong with him. And the first thing they thought he'd be poisoned with was thallium. And thallium, of course, had been used as a poison in the past. It featured in one of Agatha Christie's books, The Pale Horse. But it was John Henry, one of the toxicologists in London, who said that he thought it was thallium 201 that he'd been poisoned with, which would obviously combine the toxic metal and the radiation. Um, and once that got out into the news feed, that was the first time we sort of really felt the impact, because we use thallium in myocardial perfusion imaging, and we were just inundated with calls to the BNMS. Why are we giving patients thallium when it's a toxic metal and a radioactive substance? We had to sort of obviously educate people as to the whole problem with what they perceived thallium to be as a poison. And we thought this had blown over. And then a number of days later, of course, it was revealed that it was polonium-210, and the media came back in volumes. We had all sorts of inquiries, and it was unprecedented in the BNMS as far as I was aware. And a number of us, I know Andrew Hilson was around on the Today programme. I ended up on Sky News and BBC Breakfast. It was a really difficult time because we didn't know much about polonium-210 either. So we had to do a quick bit of homework about it. And it was really just reassuring everybody and sort of obviously trying to cope with all the media inquiries.
Wow, I mean, I remember you talking about entire incident in one of the lectures, and I think that would be really, really interesting lecture for our members who probably were not there at that time, or maybe the members to remember. And then I think there's so many lessons to learn. It's just I'm sure this was amazing experience, which then led you to get invited, I think, to represent the UK, is it, as a delegate on OECD?
As part of that, yes, the other thing that was occurring at the time was there was a number of disruptions to generator supplies and shortages of molybdenum and iodine-131. And I was asked to join the OECD high-level security group on the security of radionuclide supplies, and ended up going there regularly for the next 7 years as the UK delegate. And during that time, the reactor producers were organising their schedules. Many of them were getting quite old and unreliable. And we worked with the observatory there and the commercial suppliers to make sure that the reactor schedules allowed production of molybdenum throughout the year with minimal disruptions. But I know that went on, those problems continued right through to, I think, John Buscombe's presidency, where he did organise a meeting in Westminster, I think, to highlight the issues.
Yeah, I think probably these issues are still around, is it? So I think it's always for us important to look for the future supply
Yeah.
of isotope in the UK, and homegrown supply is still very limited. So as we mentioned, you've been working in nuclear medicine for almost 40 years in Nottingham, and tonight we have your colleague, consultant clinical scientist, our honorary treasurer, Chani, who joined us this evening. Chani is a healthcare science leader with extensive experience in nuclear medicine. He also serves as the regional chief scientific officer for the Midlands at NHS England, providing strategic leadership for the healthcare science workforce, and he also championing innovations, quality, and professional developments across the region. Chani, I'm sure you would like to ask a few questions and discuss with Alan about his experience. And I'm sure that you will be able to share some stories from your many years working together.
Thank you, Sabina. Yes, it's nice to catch up with Alan again. I think I started in Nottingham about 2004, I think. I had a couple of stints there, but we've been working together, I think, quite a few years whilst we were there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, a couple of questions for you, Alan. What do you think was the most rewarding or memorable moment of your term? And is there a particular initiative or legacy that you're most proud of?
Probably personally, I was very honoured to become the first non-medical president of the BNMS. So that in itself was a huge accomplishment, I felt, and I think it gave a lot of encouragement to a lot of other clinical scientists and technologists in the BNMS, and of course the pharmaceutical scientists as well. I think personally, my biggest sort of pleasure was receiving honorary fellowship of the Royal College of Physicians, because again, that was quite an honour. So I really felt that was something. But as far as my legacy is concerned, I think one of the nicest or the sort of most important things for the BNMS was that because of me being the Honourary Secretary and the President, we had the privilege of having Charlotte Weston join us. And of course, Charlotte had her office in the hospital with us, Shani. She was in medical physics and nuclear medicine for many years, and then eventually took over from Sue Hatchard. So that's the reason why the office was in Nottingham for many years and why the postal address is now Derby. And we're very grateful that Charlotte is still with us and has done a sterling job looking after the BNMS and everybody who sailed with it over the years.
Definitely. I think she's kept that ship on a steady course since Sue took it from Sue.
Yes.
I guess this one question is, you were given this award. Was that in recognition of a particular piece of work or just the ongoing contribution? And then I guess the other bit around there is, who do you feel as an individual or mentors that supported you on your journey to get you to that point? I mean, you're a role model for a lot of us, but who was your role model when you were early on in your career?
Yes, I think working in Nottingham was very helpful to me, and then I'm sure you might have realised that, Charlie. But when I joined, and I'll say a little bit about this when I talk about my talk about how I ended up in Nottingham. But it was a very young medical school in the Midlands. We had a lot of very enthusiastic young medics, and we worked very closely with the radiologists, the physicians, and the people there. They were all very keen to do research projects, MDs, PhDs, and it was a great environment to work in. And I thoroughly sort of enjoyed working in Nottingham. And it took me to places that I never expected it would take me to. You know, I traveled being invited to lots of presentations, and the travel was always a privilege as well. And again, meeting so many interesting people from backgrounds in nuclear medicine as well, so right across the world. And it's been a wonderful speciality to work in. So I've always been very grateful for that.
No, that's true. It's true. I guess the other bit that we have in common is that we've both done working around drug delivery and using nuclear medicine technology to influence that direction. Do you want to sort of touch on that a bit?
Indeed, I remember meeting you in Nottingham for the first time at a certain gamma camera facility that was looking at drug delivery. And in my early days, we had the benefit of working with pharmaceutical sciences and with a number of people, particularly in gastroenterology. And we were labeling up all sorts of formulations, tablets, capsules, nasal sprays, eye drops, aerosols, and we'd look at the biodistribution and distribution of these agents. And for pharmaceutical companies, it was providing with information that they'd never had before. And Nottingham, I think, was one of the main centres that had a gamma camera dedicated for drug delivery studies. And it was a fascinating time. We learned such a lot about the formulations and about their deposition and delivery characteristics. So we both share that, Shani.
Yeah, it was an amazing use of nuclear medicine imaging technology, which you wouldn't normally think of, but it did influence a lot of drug delivery products. and the development of diagnostics as well. So it was interesting times.
Yeah,
Certainly
I
was.
think
Certainly
it's just truly amazing to listen your intriguing discussion, and we'll come back to both of you again. Just would like to now invite Dr. Alp Notke to join us, and let me introduce Alp. Alp served as the BNMS president from 2014 to 2016, becoming the Society 50th anniversary president. Lucky as I am. We like to be like having a celebration, Alp, do we? So after obtaining his medical doctorate from Shiraz University in Iran, Alp completed his postgraduate training at Edinburgh and Birmingham. He has been consultant physician in nuclear medicine in Birmingham City Hospital since 1994, marking 32 years of dedicated service to NHS as a consultant. Amazing. Congratulations, Alp.
Okay.
Throughout his career, he developed wide-ranging expertise across nuclear imaging, from radiation protection to refinement of image processing techniques. His particular clinical interests included gastrointestinal investigations, cardiac studies, brain perfusion imaging, and DAT scan. He has contributed extensively to the scientific community with more than 300 abstracts, papers, reviews, articles, and book chapters published in the field of nuclear medicine. Alp has played a pivotal role in shaping postgraduate nuclear medicine training in the UK. His leadership spans both local and national levels, including roles as training program director for nuclear medicine, head of school at STC member. Nationally, he has contributed through the Royal College of Physicians as a past Specialty Advisory Committee chair, member of the SAC for Nuclear Medicine, Regional College Representative, CPD representative for the Royal College Federations, and National STC member. He has also served on regulatory bodies such as RSAC. He remains active, involved with the BNMS, contributing to development of national guidelines, and continues to lecture widely on nuclear medicine topics, both nationally and internationally. Alp also organizing and delivers multiple educational events covering DAT scans, VQs, CCAT, sentinel node imaging, and myocardial perfusion imaging, always really with a great insight into the clinical practice. Hello, Alp. It's so lovely to see you this evening.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for the introduction. It's been pleasure sort of being invited, and it's nice to meet all these fantastic past presidents who are amazing to see what they've achieved and done. Yeah, it's been good.
Absolutely. What a legacy behind, our presidents. It's just amazing. And so what an extraordinary journey you had as well. And thank you for invaluable contribution to our nuclear medicine community and to patients' care as well. So, Alp, what actually inspired you to take on the role of BNMS president?
Right. First of all, I never thought myself good enough to be the president to start with. Not sort of high enough.
Usually they say females have an imposter syndrome.
That's right.
More than men, but of course, some really great men would have imposter syndrome. I think the better you are, the less you think of yourself in a way.
Not at all. But however, the first sort of was actually it was Brian Neely who just phoned me and said that, do you consider being president if they put me forward for it? Which was a surprise, and I was very much delighted because I thought I always liked BNMS. I've been in the council and things before as well, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to see how it works and how I can help it, really. That was the two main reasons. And I believe that BNMS has put together and brought together all these, more than any other society I know of, all different skills like nurses and technologists, radiographers and physicians. It's an amazing sort of a combination, which I think is unique for most of the societies. I can't see any other society which has brought together this many specialty and sort of different aspects of specialty together. So it was a good opportunity to sort of be involved in it and try my bit to hopefully take it forward a bit.
Yeah, that's really great. So I think that multi-professional aspect we do cherish, and as you said, a lot of medical specialty societies don't have a multi-professionals involved, and I think as a nuclear medicine being so multidisciplinary field, it's absolutely great for us to learn from each other and to contribute to developments together. So when you mentioned Brian Neely, I would like to announce that we had a video recording with Brian about his experiences, and that will be published next month on YouTube because he wasn't able to join us tonight. So I think please watch this space, and because we will have a recording from two other past presidents. As well for the YouTube video. So basically, that's another initiative that we are having here. And Brian, interestingly, Brian did say to me a long time ago, you are going to be president one day. And I think that was first time when I heard from someone that getting that idea. So it's great that he seems inspired both of us. That's something common. Thank you, Brian. Not sure whether he will be probably able to visit at some point recorded webinar. So, and what were the challenges during your presidency, apart that you had a lovely celebration of 50th anniversary and some other celebrations, I believe?
Yeah, I don't think any challenges are unique really for one period. This is something which keeps going on and passed on from one group or one person or one sort of a period to the another. So I think it was mainly the ongoing challenges. I was very fortunate not to have disasters like COVID or severe shortage of molybdenum, etc. So relatively speaking, compared to other people, which we had before in the previous things, I did not have huge sort of challenges to sort of overcome. But of course, the biggest concern I had at that time, because I was also, as you mentioned, with the SAC, was the quite, I think, dramatic change in the training of the physicians in particular, which I was very much interested. And I'm so glad to see that it's come to where it is now, because at some point at my time and after me, of course, the following presidents had a lot of a challenge bringing together two huge colleges, which is the Royal College of Radiology and Royal College of Physicians together in a very relatively small specialty. And I'm hoping that I have contributed some to bringing these together and making the specialty quite an interesting specialty for both colleges. I think they're both now sort of accepted as a very sort of a interesting specialty to be involved in. So that was probably one of the challenges which maybe kept me awake for a few nights at least, not to speak more. So that was probably my sort of a big thing. But of course, not challenged. The pleasures were, as you said, just happened that the 50th anniversary of the BNMS was when I was president, which, of course, like anything else, actually, that's good to know about anyone who becomes president later, that you're not alone. There's a huge team behind us, which is really supporting it. I mean, there's the council, which really basically you learn from them and you just probably take their advice to do what you normally do. So I think it was a collective sort of effort doing all these, including arranging the 50th anniversary. Also, we had the 25th anniversary of the radiography technology and nurses group, which was another occasion which I enjoyed a lot. I
mean, I just think this is something we need to think about for the, like, not to miss maybe in 4 years time or whatever, then they might have a 35 years or something like that. Or we'll just count with RTN group. I will need to remind them that they need to celebrate as well their anniversaries. And I will invite someone who is very supportive, again, our treasurer. As you said, council is there to help you, and obviously treasurer is having a major role to help to keep everything under control and ensure that we have a real effective use of our the fundings. And I think that Chani would like to ask you a few questions as well.
Yes, lovely to catch up with you again at HELP. It's actually quite a coincidence that I've got two past presidents here that I worked with Alan, and there was a very short period where our paths crossed as well when I was doing my MSc project in '94 at City Hospital. I think you just started at that point as well, so that was a bit of a coincidence, wasn't it? So my question to you is again, to Alan, what was your most rewarding and memorable moment of your term, and is there a particular legacy or initiative that you're proud of?
Right. I think I've got lots of sort of memorable periods and times, including quite lively discussions at times in the council. I really enjoy remembering the discussions which went on. We had people who were sort of involved in various parts. And as I said before, it is the council, the PSC, the scientific committee, they're all the backbones of the sort of organization which keeps going it. So they are all very nice. A very minor sort of a thing which I always enjoy having had something to do with it was the President Medal, which I mentioned before. It was really in tatters when I got there. And I decided I'll go and find a place to repair it. And the funny thing was that when I went to this shop in Jewelry Quarter, they said, we have made this actually. And they actually, I think, offered it free to renovate it and change everything, which was quite pleasing to see that after 50 years, still it was going on, that company which made the President's Medal, which was something which I sort of enjoyed sort of remembering. And of course, I think probably one thing which I've always been from actually the time of when I was a student was computers. I've been really interested in computers and digitalization. And I sort of think that at least I encouraged in a smaller scale, at least, to introduce more of the digitalization and AI into it. I think if I'm not wrong, the first year we had the BNMS app, for example, for the phones and things was it had already started, but I think we managed to get it into a better form, and it evolved and became better after I finished, of course. And also I remember encouraging Charlotte, which I'm not sure she was very pleased because she had to scan hundreds and hundreds of pages of the previous documents in the BNMS sort of archives, because I thought these archives, if they're not digitized, we'll lose them, which it was also interesting just to have a look at them while they were being scanned and find all sorts of interesting facts and incidents which had happened during that period. So I'm hoping that I've sort of everything is going AI anyway, but I hope I had the fortune of being maybe one of the earlier people who sort of started it in a way. So
that's great.
Thank you. Just want to say that clearly I think it was a major change, is it? And it was a way forward for our field, and AI is playing a major role in medicine nowadays, but science continues to evolve rapidly within nuclear medicine, shaping both our clinical practice and our future directions. And over the years, we have all witnessed major developments and transformative changes across our progressive specialty. So it's now my pleasure to invite Professor Alan Perkins again to share his perspectives and deliver the keynote lecture of this evening webinar, which I will repeat the title, Personal Journey from the First Surgical Gamma Probes to Intraoperative Hybrid Imaging. Alan, please, can you share your talk now? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabina. It's a pleasure to join you this evening, and thank you for inviting me to give you this talk. Um, there are many topics I could have spoken on, but I just felt that I would give this topic as something a little bit more personal, which gives a little bit more of an insight into how I got into medical physics and nuclear medicine and what I was doing from the start right to this very day. So, first of all, a declaration of interest. Although I'm retired, due to some spin out of technology from the universities of Nottingham and Leicester, I'm a scientific consultant to a small company called Serec Life Sciences, which I'll describe a little bit later on. But obviously, I need to declare that interest. So when I started uh, working in medical physics, it was in 1976. So it's actually 50 years next month that I started working in nuclear medicine. And in those days, we had old rectilinear scanners. I still worked on some of the rectilinear scanners at the Derby hospitals. We did radioimmunoassay. I did my basic training in a range of specialities, including radiotherapy planning, which was hand drawn at the time. And the job that I was particularly appointed to do was to do some B scanning and ultrasound. We had one of the first grayscale B scanners in the country at Derby at that time, and my job was to maintain the equipment. And I did run the scanning, some of the scanning services with the other physicists and technologists in the department. And it was an interesting time. The gamma cameras were just sort of coming into use, but the scans that we did on the rectilinear scanners, you can see the bone scans, thyroid scans, and lung scans. And you can understand that moving to gamma cameras after that was a huge step forward, and we really felt sort of we were pioneering in some great technology as the gamma cameras were brought into life in the hospitals, certainly around the Trent region that Derby and Nottingham was in. And going through to the topic of my talk, which is on probes and sort of probe studies, this is a little description of the studies that were done in 1979 at Nottingham General Hospital. And one of the tests there you can see was the fibrinogen uptake test, which was iodine 125 fibrinogen, which was administered to the patient. And you would then do a series of lines at 5 to 10 centimeters intervals throughout the whole of the lower limb, and you take readings with a scintillation detector and plot out an activity profile curve along the leg to see if there were any signs of deep vein thrombosis. And it was a test at the time which was used to sort of detect that. There were very few other techniques that could determine the accumulation of a thrombus in that way. It was before the times of detailed ultrasound and before MRI was available. So it was a useful test at the time. But when I joined Nottingham in 1980, it was an exciting time. It was a young hospital. I was at Queen's Medical Centre initially. And we had a very enthusiastic orthopedic surgical team. So much so that they were sort of one of the premier departments in the country. And when Prince Charles fell off his polo horse in 2001, he was taken to Nottingham for the orthopedic surgeons there to fix his collarbone. But they were particularly interested in looking at this benign tumor called osteoid osteoma. Now, nowadays, you can localize it by many other means, but at the time, you really couldn't see it on an X-ray. And the best way of seeing it was on a bone scan, where you could see the nidus of the tumor. You can see here, there's an example, the nidus of the tumor shown in the leg there. And osteoid osteoma could only be cured by surgical excision. It was predominantly in the long bones of adolescents. It caused extreme pain, a lot of distress to children and to the adults. And the surgeons were very keen to remove it. And so we had one of the very first gamma probes. You can see on the top left of the screen here. This was a sodium iodide crystal with a fiber optic tube to get the light flashes down to a PM tube. That was rather inefficient because you've got a lot of spurious light flashes in the fiber optics there. And we moved to this particular device, this radiation monitoring device's probe system. And you can see it had a gamma probe, a rate meter, and you could peek into the technetium or whatever you were using, but in this case for bone scanning. And over a period of about 15 years, I travelled the country with this kit. The probe was sterilised in ethylene oxide gas, and having had it calibrated, put in a sterile pack, I'd then go on a car journey or an air journey up to various places. I travelled from Southampton to Aberdeen with this particular setup and assisting orthopaedic surgeons in the removal of osteoid osteoma. And we documented 68 surgical procedures. 58 cases were osteoid osteoma. We published this with my colleague John Hardy, who was at Nottingham at the time, in 1996. And this was before surgical probes were really available. It was before sentinel node detection was sort of prominent at all. So it was quite a pioneering technique to use. And the surgeons were all very, very grateful when we helped them localize where these lesions were. They literally would cut into the bone and they could not see the nidus of the tumor, but using the probe, they could identify exactly where it was, and they could then check to see whether the activity had gone, that they'd removed the nidus completely. We also used it for a range of other conditions. We did some neuroendocrine tumors. I remember going up to Aberdeen hospitals. There was a 30-year-old patient now who'd got severe reaction to antibiotic therapy and had 13 previous operations for removal of a chronic bone infection lesion. And eventually we did manage to find that with the probe, and the patient then remained infection-free. Other example there, you can see an ectomic adenoma, parathyroid in the chest, just down at the bottom here. And this was removed again by localizing with the probe. So we did a lot of surgical procedures with these before sentinel node techniques were developed. And you can see it was then later on in 2007 when the Royal College of Surgeons started the new START program for sentinel lymph node imaging. And the probe that I was using, which was the RMD system, then became the Navigator, which many people will be familiar with. And it's now, I think, available through Dillon as the company that's now marketing it. But this was sort of way before this was developed. At the time then when the Royal College of Surgeons came out with their program, I think a lot of the training was led by Alan Britton, and I worked with him for many years to get some of these sentinel node probes going, and we did a lot of work on calibrating and standardizing the procedures for the probes. So it was, again, a period of development, which is now standard practice for sentinel node in many type of tumors. Also at that time, we had interest from the intensive care physicians who had a number of issues that they wanted to see whether nuclear medicine could help. And again, with the team in Nottingham, we looked at bedside nuclear medicine investigations using probe systems. The one we used was from John Cornt. It was called Medicint. Some people might remember it. You had 4 probes, you positioned over organs in the patient, and you could look at the kinetics of traces. This particular system has been modernized, I believe is still available for people who want to do any monitoring of traces. But we applied it for renal and hepatic function intensive care. We looked at gastric outflow in patients following parenteral feeding. And the one thing that they were particularly interested in was adult respiratory distress syndrome, where we used indium chloride to label up the plasma proteins and technetium for labeling red cells. And we worked out a lung vascular plasma protein accumulation index, which was quite useful to them at the time. Of course, these techniques became superseded, but it also shows a period when probe systems were in demand and quite widely used outside of the nuclear medicine department. And then following that, by chance meeting with a scientist from Leicester, the name of John Lees, He worked at the Space Research Centre and led a bioimaging unit at Leicester. And jointly with another colleague, we were looking at autoradiography of sections. And he mentioned that from some of their technology that they'd sent up into satellite imaging and cosmic ray and X-ray and gamma imaging in space, that they'd got the possibility of a small camera system. And John and I got together and we thought, well, this would be quite interesting to have a high resolution camera. And we worked together and patented some technology for a hybrid high resolution gamma camera. And you can see the image on the left shows the various stages of its development from a very crude system here with sort of lead around an electric box here through to what became the sort of forerunner of this hybrid gamma camera that we worked on. And I worked with John and still do work with John on the development of this. And we started the first development of this camera to give us a hybrid system. So it had a pinhole camera system. It was backed by a charge couple device, which would take the counts from a scintillator. So here's the CCD. You can see here the scintillator was a columnus cesium iodide, which would channel the lights down, a little bit like the pixelated detectors in a PET scanner. And you could then focus the gamma image through the pinhole. So at a camera face, you can see it various different away. We had a very high resolution imaging device, as you can see in this particular test object. And situated at 45 degrees was a mirror which would deflect the optical images through to a little optical camera. So you could then look at the optical background of the system. And you could then superimpose the gamma image onto the optical image. And this provided us a new insight for imaging that we felt had a lot of merit in various small field of view applications. And we started the first clinical studies at Nottingham in the nuclear medicine clinics and did a series of patients who were coming through to nuclear medicine and published this in Nuclear Medicine Communications in 2017. And you can see that it was a handheld device. It could be placed over the patient, and we could get some quite interesting backgrounds. So you could see superimposed on the skin where you can see the swelling in the neck of this patient who was given iodine 123 for thyroid imaging. And you could superimpose the thyroid image onto the skin, which I think gave quite a lot of meaning to people to understand where the site of uptake was in the patient. Other examples at the time that we did, a test that probably isn't done very frequently now, was lacrimal drainage. Again, you could see the clearance of the tracer from the eye and through the nasolacrimal duct. So you could see very clear whereabouts in the anatomical site that the activity was placed. And then, as I say, eventually, after those studies were done, the universities licensed this technology out to CERAC imaging systems, where the gamma camera was reprototyped. It was put into a shell-shielded camera head mounted on a stand. The front had an LED light to illuminate the surface of the skin, and the pinhole collimator was mounted on a ring where you could automatically select the size of the collimator by software. It was so nice to just press a button and you could choose the 1 millimeter or the 2 millimeter or the 5 millimeter pinhole to optimize the imaging conditions. And this particular device has been tested now at various hospitals within the States, and it's also been tested extensively by a couple of my ex-PhD students at Kuala Lumpur at the University of Malaya Medical Center. And you can see here in sentinel node imaging, there's a conventional gamma camera image on the left with the injection site on the node, whereas here you can see the optical image. You can just see the breast site of injection site, and the sentinel node, which is showing up quite nicely here, superimposed onto the skin. And you can imagine how the surgeon will be able to get a much better view of whereabouts in the patient this activity is taken up. So it has a lot of promise in this area. And I went over in June 24 into the operating theatre, and you could see the surgeons there working with the system, where on the top of the anatomical image taken by the camera, which is just above the patient here, You can see the skin, the neck of the patient, and they're pinpointing the exact location of where they're going to make the incision into the patient. So we felt that this really, with the real-time imaging facility that the company had developed on top of our technology, there was actually some quite, I think, revolutionary imaging as far as this particular device is concerned. And then finally, just to sort of take to another dimension, when in Nottingham, if you look at the image on the left, we wondered whether this device would be any good for environmental imaging. And you can see an image of some activity on a tray there with some activities on a glove and a syringe and in a vial. And now using dynamic imaging facility, you can see on the right, for manipulating and moving sources, this becomes a very powerful environmental imaging tool. And this is now being actually looked at Sellafield and other atomic energy sites where they're using it for decommissioning and cleaning up. So the technology, I think, has got a lot of potential, and we're very excited to see where that would go. So I think with that, I'll sort of leave it to, and anybody who wants to ask any questions in due course, then are very welcome to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for that. It's amazing the work that you've done in your time at Nottingham. You've been a real pioneer, and the impact of the use of probes beyond the patient benefit. It's the actual benefit to the trust, the amount of theatre time that it gets cut out and the throughput that's increased. It's massive. So no, it's really good. And some of those images, I recognise the people, I recognise the facilities. So it's really good. Where do you see it? You know, you've seen a lot of development. What would you say was in the pipeline for us in the next 5 to 10 years, do you think, around this area?
Well, I think obviously you talked about AI and things like that. I think that the software for rapid analysis of images and for diagnosis is going to be a huge area. It's something I only touched on in my career, but I could see huge development there. Personally, obviously we've got most manufacturers going for big pieces of equipment, expensive, and I'd like to see some of these smaller devices for bedside imaging, perhaps extending nuclear medicine out into the operating theatre and intensive care as being a sort of one area that we perhaps haven't explored fully. And I'd also like to see, I think it will come, a little bit more development in technetium radiopharmaceuticals, because we're seeing huge amount of development in the PET tracers. Again, rightly so, they're doing some fantastic work there. But conventional gamma camera imaging, I think we're missing out a little bit because there seems to be very few new tracers that are technetium labeled. And I think that's an area of opportunity for nuclear medicine in the future.
No, definitely. That sounds great.
Can I just ask about intensive care? Because clearly, I think it's one of the areas that this can be really applicable. So do you think about any indications already?
Well, we do have a project in the pipeline with the Royal Brompton Hospital, where we're hoping to look at patients who are recovering from parenteral feeding, where gastric outflow, I think, would be a major assistance to these patients as they sort of come round from prolonged periods when they can't take oral feeding. So I think that will be an extremely interesting area. And there may be some other tests. One area I know Alp has pushed, and I'm fully behind him, is hepatobiliary imaging, and it seems to be an underused test as well. And it may be that's an area that we could look at as well.
I mean, it just crossed my mind. It might be not applicable, but I think it could be very much like in brain death, because clearly we always had such a powerful tracers which we underutilized in assessment of the irreversible brain injuries and the brain death, because we can't bring our cameras to the patients.
Yes. Yes, you mentioned a very interesting area there, Sabina. We have had expressions of interest from the States where brain death seems to be a test that is done more widely than anywhere else, I think. mainly for securing resources and maybe other legal implications in that. And they asked if this camera could be used for brain death investigation because I hadn't really appreciated, never having done a study of brain death, but obviously it's such a traumatic thing for the staff and for relatives and patients and everybody involved that if they're going to do a patient who's being investigated for brain death, they would have to clear the department, and it's so disruptive of services. Whereas if you could take the camera to the patient to do this study, it would be so much easier and cause a lot less distress to the staff and to the patient's family.
Yeah, I think it would be a great project for us in the UK if we could ever get the funding for. I'm just thinking, I have an image from Durval Costa when I was doing MSc from UCL, when like was a power of, nuclear medicine imaging says in that image when you see the virtually empty brain, not perfused. So
Yeah.
I think, it's sort of very underutilized test, which I think the hybrid, probes could actually help to be utilized in the future. So that's fantastic. And there's so many other indications, sentinel node imaging, like now we're doing sentinel node imaging for prostate cancer, for example, for like gynae cancers, for head and neck, melanoma as
Yes.
well. So it's amazing. I mean, and images are brilliant, really, really looking fantastic. So thank you, Alan, for sharing this. It's amazing. I just was really impressed to see. I'm going to go to see whether we have questions from the audience. Should I just read firstly some really nice comments about ALP as you for teacher from, I think it was Cheng Lo, saying that how lovely teacher, just want to say that Alp is a great teacher and mentor. I was fortunate to train and learn under his guidance. And then Jilly also added that although you were not a president during the COVID, you actually contributed to developing of a prioritization document, which we are still using, and they are very thankful to you. However, there is a question which says, from Roger Moshi, Dr. Nati, when AI eliminates the need for human beings, should we blame you for your input, or will that ever happen? Certainly, don't want to blame you.
Well, I would say that AI probably will replace the unpleasant parts of the work which we do. I hope we'll hang on to the nice bits and let the AI handle the routine and the sort of things which you don't really want to do. So I hope that it'll actually enhance our experience rather than replace us. So that would be and I won't be blamed because it is coming and it was coming and it's not me. I've just been in the cogwheel of this process. I'm not part of it. I'm not the one who initiated or even it's on a roll. It won't stop.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was just like probably like trying to be like funny comment in a way, but it was.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yes.
I can see that it is something which would concern some people, of course, the AI, and it's been a big discussion how far it goes and what it does, and how we can't control it actually, how we benefit from it, and how we get friends with it rather than competitors, I think.
There is a question from Wendy Tyndall, who is one of our greatest members as well of the BNMS, asking Alan, and actually saying that great to hear from Alan and Alp. There is now such a focus of neighborhood health. Do you see any opportunity there for nuclear medicine going forwards? I think question is for both. Neighborhood health?
Well, maybe I could pick off. I mean, obviously, the work we've been doing with the probes, and particularly with the small camera imaging, then yes, it does opportunities for taking nuclear medicine procedures out into small clinics, doctors' clinics, daycare units, or something like that. The only reservation I've got is that we do have a regulatory restriction because of the use of radioactivity. So technetium, it is possible, but you'd have to manage the use of the activity. But I think, yes, there certainly are a lot of opportunities to take nuclear medicine out of the nuclear medicine department and do some of these tests, preferably with the shorter-lived tracers.
Yeah. I can just add that when I was in Edinburgh, we used to have a mobile camera, which you took it hundreds of miles around, trying to come. It wasn't really into the community, but it was into centers of communities which we took, and it is challenging, I must say, because the equipment we use are sort of a bulky and unyielding for transportation. And as Alan said, the environmental and physics of it makes it very difficult to move it in small centers, I think, at the moment, unless these handheld cameras find a use which might be useful. They are portable and they are easy to do, really.
Yeah.
And of course, I think we should always bear in mind that nuclear medicine is about function and physiology. It's not just an imaging technique, which I think sometimes, because the images look so nice now on the sort of PET and SPECT scanners, that it's the function and the kinetics that we should always bear in mind that's of interest to us in nuclear medicine.
So we're coming close to the end of the webinar, so I wanted to ask you about your vision and what advice would you offer to next generations of professionals entering the field today? Alp, maybe first?
I mean, the first thing I will say is that BNMS as an organization is something which is certainly worth supporting as much as we can. And more personally, for those who think of presidency, you are not alone. There's a huge team which supports you and really makes it a pleasure rather than a sort of a lonely leading position. So don't be scared to sort of consider it if you would wish to. As for the future of nuclear medicine, I agree with Alan in a way that there's always this debate about the PET is better images because it's more refined, etc. But of course, the SPECT, on the other hand, has got the wider availability and being cheaper, considerably cheaper sometimes. So I don't think, I don't think it'll go away, the SPECT. It's a bit like lung scan. Every decade they say it's finished, it's ended, and it comes back. So I think I agree also that probably the development of the radiopharmaceuticals for SPECT has been overlooked a bit because of the excitement of the other one. But the resolution even is catching up with the PET. So I think these two will go hand in hand, and they would both be sort of invaluable tools for diagnosis. So I think for the future, I think it'll be, as Alan said, is whichever you can, you will be looking into the physiology of these, so the bodily function or animal function, you might even say, in some instances. So
thank you.
This is what I think. We'll continue having both quite different systems as long as I can see at the moment. Yeah.
Brilliant. And any final reflections or messages, Alan, that you would like to share with the BNMS?
Yes, I would always just suggest to people, give it a try and do that little bit of extra just to help your profession and help your colleagues. I think the chance to meet other people is amazing, really. And if you do, I mean, we sort of have a scientific background, a lot of us, I think, with the physicians, the scientists and the technologists. If you do something that's different or you think is helpful, share it, talk about it, write it up. Don't just bury it. Just make sure you pass that message on to other people.
Brilliant. Chani, do you want to say a final word?
A final word, I guess, is thank you to both Alan and Alp for sharing your time and your experiences and your reflections of nuclear medicine. And thank you for your contributions to our modality. They are very valued. And to our audience, I hope to see you all at Manchester for our 60th anniversary. And can I ask for people to share photos of their nuclear medicine services and their memories? And we want to make a collage of all those memories and want to put them up there on a big wall at Manchester. So if you have any ideas, any pictures, do send them on to BNMS office.
Just to say thank you to our sponsors again, and also please join us for one more webinar with the past presidents on 14th of April. And thank you for all your contributions. Thank you, Alan and Alp and Chani and Dom, of course. And thank you to Charlotte, who names been mentioned. She's been brilliant CEO for 20 years. And thanks everyone for your fantastic contributions tonight. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
No.
Good night.